moving on to Mark, and let's bring you on the screen. I think it's back on the subject of the World Health Organization.
Yes, this is a brief update. I signed up. Here's a creative idea. I signed up on the mailing list of the WHO, everybody's favorite pastime, right? And they started sending me press releases. So I'm going to be contacting WHO media people with some pointed questions I've come up with, and the WHO pandemic treaty researcher, James Roguski of LA as well. He's made a lot of great reports and asks a lot of very pertinent questions. This is just some basics that I started getting from the WHO once I signed up. Countries set out way forward for continued negotiations on global agreement on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. They're using the word agreement. They're avoiding that word treaty. This is dated the 17th of June, very recently. Moving on from there. Countries of the World Health Organization have moved forward in their negotiations on a global accord. Now it's an accord on pandemic prevention, et cetera, with a view to presenting a draft accord to the World Health Assembly. Sure enough, they're staying on track. They're saying that'll be May of 2024, a little less than a year from now. Ending yesterday, discussions on the draft pandemic accord took place during the 5-day resumed session of the 5th meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body. That's the treaty negotiating panel, which includes WHO's 194 member countries, et cetera, et cetera. We can move on from there. Ending yesterday, keeping in mind the date of the press release, discussions on the draft pandemic accord took place. Discussions. Let's go to the bottom. The drafting group discussed Chapter 2, addressing Articles 9, research and development, 10, liability risk management, 11, co-development and transfer of technology and know-how, 12, access and benefit sharing, 13, supply chain and logistics, and 14, regulatory strengthening. That gives you some of the things that they're covering. And going from there, I think we have one more. The meeting then agreed to continue consideration of several of these articles through informal meetings of the drafting group. As a pilot, informal meetings on Article 9, research and development of the Bureau's texts were held twice on the sidelines of the drafting group meeting. The Intergovernmental Negotiating Body, the INB, agreed to a series of intersessional informal meetings for the drafting group participants in advance of the 6th meeting of the INB. Articles 9, 12, and 13 there, along the lines that I mentioned. The 6th meeting of the INB will be held in July from the 17th till the 21st, so there's an announcement there. And the drafting group will be invited to continue its work with consideration of the Bureau's text. The Bureau's text is the current evolving treaty that they're calling an accord, and so on and so forth. And the last thing I'll mention, it was noted that a joint plenary session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body and the working group on the amendments to the international health regulations, which run in parallel with the developing treaty, that'll be held on the afternoon of the 21st of July and the morning of the 24th of July. So this just gives you an idea, a little bit of what they're talking about and when they're doing it, just to keep our viewers on track so they know how to get involved at whatever level they can to make their views known on this WHO treaty process and the international health regulations. So there you go, Brian.
Mark, thank you very much. And am I right, Mark, in saying, and of course, all of this is set in the form that countries have to opt out of it. It's a rolling machine. You're caught up in it unless you opt out. Is that correct?
Yeah, the general understanding is if you don't make a complaint, you're assumed to be consenting to it. So if you don't say anything, they assume you support it. There's lots of bells and whistles to this thing, but the main thing is that they want to have one body calling most of the shots for informed consent and health choice, including so-called vaccine choice, rather than nations being able to opt out or subunits like states or counties within nations being able to opt out. That way, the next big pandemic that they declare, which could be the bird flu, they can say, look, we've got this accord, we've got the international health regulations, the WHO runs most of the show, and so individual nations cannot opt out at all, or at least not as much as they used to during during the initial COVID scare. So that's what they're going for, and that's why we need to stay informed on a steady basis.
Okay, excellent, Mark. Thank you very much for that. Well, we're at the end of the news, but David, you've got a particularly interesting little image that you wanted to share with us.
Well, this comes from the mixed messages that were sent by the Scottish Parliament to essentially the world of law enforcement, because Nicola Sturgeon was arrested and questioned for 7 hours, released without charge, but questioned for 7 hours by Police Scotland over the missing £666,000 in the SNP, or rather not in the SNP coffers. And this is going to be as part of an ongoing investigation, and we don't know how that's going to go yet. How did the Scottish Parliament respond? Well, they sent her flowers because it was traumatic. It was very upsetting for her. So what we have here is a cartoon of Police Scotland WPC reading the rights to a broken-nosed, knuckle-dragging thug, but simultaneously giving him a bunch of flowers because, it might be upsetting for him. So I thought that was very good. And
David,
we're going to finish in a little...
David, I'm sure the one
Sorry.
on the right actually is a woman, because I think it's pregnant, isn't it? I think you're confused over this image.
No. Trust me, I come from Lanarkshire. That's a bloke. Now, and finally, we have a song. Now, we've featured Dominic Frisby's songs. In fact, this very song once or twice, or maybe even more often, on the column before. But this was an extra verse he wrote to his song, maybe just for a very special Scottish politician.
They said she was formidable, a lady to admire, the Scottish Margaret Thatcher. Full of balls and full of fire. All those English tyrants, she would hold them to account. She'd have another referendum with loads and loads of recounts. She's just so brave, she's just so strong, such a success. Nevertheless, maybe Nicola Sturgeon's really Burglar Bill. A socialist of the old school with her hands in the till. Power crazed, praised and praised. She behaved like she was a genius. I cannot wait for her cellmate to be some bird with a penis. Maybe Nicola Sturgeon's Burglar Bill.
Well, there you have it. I hope that brought a smile to your faces at the end of what is very often now a very serious UK column news. But of course, these are the events unfolding around us. We'll leave it there. David Scott and Mark and Di, thank you very much for joining us. We will be back for extra time in a few moments. But I'm going to say a very, very big thank you to our audience, all of the wonderful emails, gifts that are sent in to us, books, papers, research. It's really tremendous to see our worldwide audience engaging with the UK column. So we're going to say thank you very much. For our supporters, please make sure you join Extra Time on Wednesday, because we'll be doing a second part to where we're going with UK column and our new home and studio. So we'll be back in a few moments for Extra Time. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.